revolutionizing global supply chains with multimodal logistics. This panel will delve into how multimodal logistics is reshaping the way goods are moved across the globe, providing businesses with an efficient, cost effective, and sustainable solution to meet the demands of a rapidly changing global market. First, I would like to invite on stage our absolutely beautiful moderator for this session, Ms. Chaitali Mehta, Director, EKF Logistics. With 25 years in logistics, she is the powerhouse behind EKF Global Logistics, a problem-solving maven and the first woman office bearer for ACCAI, Western Region. She's a trailblazer in the air cargo industry. Her expertise in air cargo and projects adds immense value to the group. Ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it for Chaitali Mehta. Welcome, ma'am. Next, I would like to invite on stage Mr. Rohan Dixit, Director, Business Development, Clearship Group. He's a seasoned business development specialist with a proven track record in the logistics and supply chain industry, proficient in operations management, business development, logistics management, competitive analysis, and strategy. Ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it for Mr. Rohan Dixit. Wow, we have another woman on the panel today. Sorry guys, I think very soon women are going to be taking over. Apologies for that, but I see that happening very soon. Next, I would like to invite on stage Miss Caroline Gonsalves, Country Head, Ocean Freight, Continental Carriers. With extensive experience in ocean freight and logistics, Ms. Gonsalves leads the strategic direction and operations for Continental Carriers Ocean Freight divisions in India. Her expertise lies in optimizing freight solutions, streamlining operations, and building strong relationships with global shipping networks. Ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it for Ms. Caroline Gonsalves. Guys, two women on the panel. Don't you think they deserve a big round of applause? Come on. Next, I would like to invite on stage Mr. Veer Matar, Senior Manager Cargo, Gulf Air. With extensive experience in air cargo operations, he plays a pivotal role in managing Gulf Air's cargo division, ensuring smooth and efficient handling of air freight services. His leadership has been instrumental in optimizing cargo operations and expanding the airline's cargo network across the globe. Ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it from Mr. Whale. Welcome, sir. Wow, that was like the loudest clap. Thank you so much. Imagine the panelists are clapping for themselves. It doesn't work like that. Come on, everyone. Next, I would like to invite on stage Mr. Dharmendra Gangade, Head of Logistics Management Center, Larsen & Toubro. With over 2.5 decades of expertise in global shipping and logistics, he is a thought leader and subject matter expert regularly featured in global conferences. In past, he has successfully led and managed complex shipping and logistics operations with large MNCs and Indian companies. Ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it from Mr. Dharmendra. Next, I would like to invite on stage Dr. Ghanshyam Singh, Head of Purchase and Supply Chain, Cosmo Films. With a robust background in supply chain management, he is an expert in streamlining operations, enhancing recruiting strategies, and implementing cost-effective solutions that contribute to the company's operational efficiency. Ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it for Dr. Ghanshyam Singh. This is a very big panel today. It's never-ending. Next, I would like to invite on stage Mr. Mitesh Gangar, VP and Head Specialties Business and Supply Chain, Aarti Industries. His leadership in managing complex supply chains and implementing innovative solutions has been key to the company's success in delivering high-quality products to global markets. He is known for his strategic approach, fostering collaboration and optimizing processes to achieve operational excellence. Ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it from Mr. Mitesh Gangar. Chaitali, over to you. Have a wonderful panel discussion.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. And like Miss Pinky says, can we have a huge round of applause? This one is for you for staying back for the last session of the day. So if you are not applauding for yourself, then we will have to do it for you also. Another round of applause for all of you to stay back for us. And we are officially kicking off. Good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for staying back to hear our panel. I know it's not easy, and it would have been a long day for all, and we appreciate the audience here. I don't know what is tough actually, starting off the exhibition with the first session or ending it. So Ayushi puts me through the grind every single year, and I can't wait to see what you do next year, Ayushi. And thank you to Mohit and Ayushi for always wanting me over here at the exhibition. Our session today. We all know about multimodal logistics, use the term frequently in our conversations and make use of it too. But do we really know what multimodal or intermodal logistics is all about? The different aspects, the pros and the cons. Everyone here present and connected with logistics has something unique. We are all constantly agile and fluid. You may ask, why is this unique? For us to not only survive, but thrive with immense competition one faces here, we are constantly changing, adapting, evolving, because at some point or the other, our clients, the exporters and importers, have faced difficulty and or hardships when one mode of transport suddenly becomes very expensive, unviable to use, compelling us to find an alternative method in SOS mode. Multimodal transportation is a strategy that integrates different modes of transport to optimize the movement of goods. It offers numerous benefits, including enhanced connectivity, reduced congestion, lower costs, improved logistics, and increased sustainability. By leveraging the strengths of each mode of transport and utilizing intermodal terminals and containerization, multimodal transportation improves the efficiency, promotes cost effectiveness, and minimizes environmental impact. As our world becomes increasingly interconnected, multimodal transportation is likely to play an increasingly important role in shaping our transportation systems. Multimodal transport can help businesses reduce their environmental impact by shifting some transportation activities from road to rail or water. This is why they are emerging as an industry favorite to leverage economies of scale and efficiency across different modes of transportation. While multimodal logistics helps reduce transportation costs by 20% and carbon emissions by more than one third, it can also help promote energy savings and improve transportation efficiency by 30%. Further, stats suggest that multimodal logistics can also reduce cargo damage by 10% and highway congestion by more than 50%, which helps in making it a preferred choice for mode of transportation. In India, in order to help facilitate safe and transparent transportation process, the Multimodal Transportation Goods Act of 1993 was introduced. The Act lays down a few key responsibilities which everyone dealing in this particular stream should be aware of. MTO is essentially a license to have to keep one's shipping processes as transparent as possible, especially if you are exporting goods from and to India via multimodal transportation. The Act requires every company engaged in shipping business or freight forwarding in India and abroad to register under this Act, and it's mandatory. Multimodal transportation is basically the process of transporting goods internationally by at least two modes of transport or more, all under one carrier or freight forwarder while requiring only one document, which is the bill of lading. It is all handled under a single contract. The types of transportation that we have are maritime plus land transportation, rail plus other modes of transportation, air plus land or sea, river plus land, and intercontinental transportation as it combines different modes of transport such as sea, rail, and road to facilitate the movement of goods between the continents. With this, we officially kick off our session, and now it is time to hear our panelists and their views on what multimodal logistics means for them and their companies. I would like to start with you, Dharmendra ji. L&T is a global player with around projects happening anytime in about 20 plus countries with 500 plus projects, 15 million tons material annually being moved. Very impressive, sir. How different are the multimodal operations in India as compared to the other countries, the plus points of it in India and the hindrances that you have to face? With your varied experience, do you think we have the right skilled people at all levels to handle the growth of multimodal transport and serve customers like you in India from a client's perspective? Please, over to you, Dharmendra.
Thanks, Chetali. First of all, before I even respond to your question, my compliments to the organizers, Mohit and Ayushi. Really have taken this conference to a different level altogether. And it is just unbelievable that you are in third year of operation on this conference. I mean, I have attended many conferences worldwide. I mean, the standards which you have now brought it to the level is comparable now, right? So all the best for your next round of conferences here. And Chetali, you asked me multiple questions actually in one question, right?
Yes.
So yes, as you rightly said, that we at L&T, we are the one of the most diverse conglomerate in the country, and probably there is no second example comes close to being an L&T in the world, because our business verticals are so varied that from defense to energy, power sector, and walls and IT and financials, and you'll see that our presence is quite wide. And then this also brings in a lot of challenges in moving cargo from A to B, because we call ourselves that at L&T we move pin to platform. When I say pin, means really a pin like a hairpin size pin, which could be just some of the pin required for some as a key, or maybe some control panel or chip required for very high tech engineering, the on electronic part side of it. That also we move from A to B. And platform, when I say platform, I really mean that 4,000, 5,000 ton single piece. I repeat, 4,000 to 5,000 ton single piece oil and gas platform, which you can see, or you probably would have seen many pictures, onshore, offshore platforms which are there mid-sea. So that's anything in between, whatever moves, whatever size and type, we move. So at times we behave like a giant hauler, like the likes of the Jumbos and BBC and Lift and Shift, who move our cargo in a very snail pace speed. And at the same time, probably in some other part of the world, we would be delivering goods at the speed of the Amazon. So we have to strike a balance between the two. And having said so, we continuously strike a balance with multimodal requirement as well, because we deal with all sort of movements at any given point in time. So we find that, and our presence is global. So we have projects running across the globe, actually, multi-countries operations. And the LMC, which is Logistics Management Center, is a nerve center of the entire logistics for L&T across the globe, manages almost around 200,000 plus shipments annually, plus close to a 10,000 crores or $1.2 billion freight exposure. A lot of it goes to the multimodal, right? Because you see a lot of big and giant projects being executed. And at times we realize that many of you must be present here as a service provider, or rather we call them as a partner, that they have grown with L&T or we have grown with them. Because that is the shortage of the either skill set or the assets there in the industry, because it can't be just made available for anyone and everyone. It is highly customized when it comes to multimodal. And when it comes to solution, India really lacks for it. As I represent today L&T at a global level, which is like an Indian MNC. So when I look at the operations in my Middle East or elsewhere in the world, their multimodal operations are really very smooth. Almost there is no difference in what is non-multimodal and multimodal shipments there. It moves document-wise, knowledge-wise, or the movement of the goods, all are smooth. But when it comes to our very own India, we find it challenging to the extent that we at L&T got to be there in every piece of the activities happening be it a method statement to be read properly and made to understand the other guy who is going to be a service provider. And jointly, we actually collaboratively, we execute the shipments. So a lot of hand holding happens with each other. So we're still at a learning and growing stage in India for the project cargo on multimodal. We are at a very nascent stage, a long way to go. Yes, government does provide lot of support, lot of uh, sort of, I won't call it a red carpet, but carpet is at least laid out to discuss about the challenges what we face, and especially with the projects like Bharatmala and Gati Shakti, at least our challenges have been heard, because we are, if infrastructure has to grow, L&T and companies like L&T have to be there to deliver the cargo. And of course, through whom? Players like you, I mean, who are sitting in the room, the all established players who have to move cargo from A to B. And definitely not in a linear way. It has to be solution-centric approach. And solution-centric approach is the key for the success in the delivering multimodal shipments. And that's where the gap in the skill set is notified, because not everybody wants to be in this game because it's not a regular day-to-day, right? More I'll share with you on the course when we hear more from the other panelists here, if there are any more challenges to be addressed.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Dharmendra ji. I got a little greedy because it's not very often that we have somebody of your stature being here. So I decided that I will take my chance and ask you a couple of questions combined together, because we've always heard that when somebody associates with L&T, more than the more than the fact that L&T becomes part as their client thing, it's the fact that they learn so much more than what they had envisaged or what they have even learned. So I think it is partners like us who would be enriched and honored to be partnered with L&T, because there's just so much of learning to do. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Coming to you, Dr. Ghanshyam, you are the largest exporter of films in India, and you also would require, because films require the maximum in terms of when we are talking in terms of prices, and also multimodal transport is important. So what are your views? Because it's not project cargo like L&T or Dharmendra ji said. So do you believe that we have the available talent pool to handle the activities, say for your industry? And your company has factories which are located in the interiors of Maharashtra, Gujarat, and now with the government of Maharashtra announcing the development of the multimodal logistics plan, park rather, in Aurangabad at Shendre, where your factory is located. And also the biggest park is coming up in Ahmedabad near Virochan Nagar, again, where you have a factory which is located. How much do you think that with the coming up of these logistics parks, your company is going to benefit, or the industry is going to benefit? And do you think that we need to have a domestic multimodal logistics park too? I would like to understand. And if these parks are there, do you think they are being utilized enough from a client's perspective? And do they actually serve the purpose for which the government is planning to make that?
Thank you, Chetali, for the question. See, India is evolving, and we have seen the journey over past 10, 20 years. We have seen that how things are evolving and improving. Earlier, we used to hear only the road transport. Later on, rail also improved a lot. And now the multiple projects which government has announced is improving the overall supply chain efficiencies, and multimodal is started improving. I'll divide it in a two part. One is the export and second is the domestic. See, export, obviously multimodal is used because you will move by sea and road both, and maybe in some cases air. What I see in terms of talent for the export, I feel it's about the demand which is coming in a market. So when there is a demand, there is a talent, and more talent will come. We have seen that European and American market, the demand of multimodal is more the road, air, and other mode is combined, and the shipment is moved from a A point to a B point, maybe in US to Europe or Europe to other countries. But when we see in India, we have to do a contract with one agency for moving product from plant to the port, and from port to maybe a base port, we will do a one contract, then there is a rail movement and other stuff. So what I feel is that the demand is coming now. because the lots of India is becoming more export oriented country now. So the demand is coming and the talent is evolving slowly, but not like other Western countries, but it is improving. And I feel that over a period of time, the right talent will be available. It's more about the intent of the business owners who is dealing with the multimodal. So if I need to name a multimodal supply chain companies, I can count on my finger. So the big ones. So, but if I need to count transporter, forwarder, shipping lines, I will have a huge list. So the multimodal, if country started focusing more on that, obviously the demand of talent will come, and obviously the people will start coming in the industry. Second, in terms of domestic multimodal, some of the movement we are doing already in a multimodal. We are using rail movement, then we are using truck movement, all those stuff, because not only it will help you in a cost, but also support the environment. We see that how much carbon we are generating, and if we use our rail movement more, we will be able to reduce up to some extent. So as our organization, we focus a lot on reducing the carbon footprint. So like we use maximum rail movement for our raw materials. We buy in a bulk, so we move to the nearest ICD, and from there we move to our plant. Now coming to the export from domestic perspective, we are using a ICD maximum. So we are moving to the nearest ICD, and from there we are using a train movement. We tried for local movement from suppose our plant is in Maharashtra. We tried for Jammu and Chennai and other parts, but the multimodal is a big challenge because there is a different time frame. There is a lead time challenges. Again, if we search for a single provider, then it's a bit challenging because there is a different partner for each activity. So that we face challenge, and I feel that now people are started discussing about it. Like a few people I met, they are saying that they have a ferry movement from they are moving vessel from a west to east part of India, and that can help in reducing the carbon footprint. And obviously, if over a period of time business started investing in a multimodal, some company may have a tie from end to end. So they will pick up from us and they will deliver to the particular point using the multimodal transportation. Few ICDs or a few MMLB has started coming in Maharashtra and Gujarat and other parts of the world. But specific to our organization, it will help because we are doing a lot of movement. We are the biggest exporter of our industry from India. We are supplying to 100 plus countries. So that will obviously help. And we have a positive thoughts about it, but let's see how time will move. Thank you.
Thank you. It's very nice to know about the sustainability initiatives that your organization is taking. Also, India predominantly has been an intermodal logistics and not a multimodal logistics. So for those, intermodal means that when we have a separate transporter, you have a separate customs broker, you have a shipping line, you have different documents, your LR is different, your freight forwarder is different. That all is intermodal. A lot of us tend to think that because we are using rail, road, air and sea options, it becomes multimodal. But in the reality, as per the actual terminology and technology, it's not multimodal, but it is intermodal. So it's very important. And I think because it's a new thing, people are still going to evolve. But we do have people like Rohan who do multimodal. I'm going to come to you in a bit, Rohan, not now. Thank you. Mitesh, I have to ask you, as an exporter and a leading exporter for pharmaceuticals at Aarti Industries, you do both air as well as ocean. But this question is going to be for the ocean part of it for you. Do you feel that for the ocean exports, the terminals that we have in operation do not have the capacity to meet the demand of the exporters, and they are not conducive for handling multimodal logistics, and more importance is given to road transportation as compared to rail? And what are the issues that you as in your company face with regards to domestic and international procurement?
Thank you, Chaitali, for those questions. I'll just build some context about the company before
Yeah.
I move on to answering those.
Thank you.
In terms of what we do at Aarti Industries, we are a manufacturer of chemicals. Almost all of the materials that we handle are hazardous. We handle gases, liquids, solids, and all of these are various forms of hazard. So they could be flammables, explosives, materials that cause cyanosis, and so on and so forth. And this will be 50 plus raw materials, 100 plus products. In a day, we are moving about 8,000 tons worth of product between our various sites, or from our site to the customer or to the port and back, and so on. So huge volumes that we are doing. And now when it comes to, first of all, talking about the ports itself, the port infrastructure, because we are situated mainly in the western part of India and across Gujarat, the two ports we end up using quite often are Nhava Sheva and Kandla. And we use both of these for different reasons. Nhava Sheva for a lot of our containerized cargo exports and imports. Kandla for our bulk cargo exports and imports. And the kind of congestion that is there at both of these ports is immense, and therefore limits our ability to be able to execute business. So, for example, if I am speaking to a customer in China, they simply cannot understand that, what is the kind of vessel frequency that there is going to be from Nhava Sheva to China. What is the difference between a direct vessel versus a vessel that is going to be, or where the cargo is going to be transshipped, and so on and so forth. So the service standards that these countries are accustomed to, somewhere we from India are not able to match those standards. And that is where, we as a company are doing things differently. In fact, we've been selling to China for the last 2 decades, where a lot of the industry is talking about, dumping from China or competition from China. We've been establishing business there, and we see that basically we are learning from them. In this last year, I want to also talk about another example. We wanted to move a product, we wanted to source a material from China, bring it to India. We've been able to very successfully buy this product from multiple Chinese factories. So this has been south of China, middle of China, north of China, factories all across the region. And depending on what suited, we've been able to move the material in barges. So barge from the sea, barge from in mid China in the river. We've been able to move material in rail. We've been able to move material by road, bring it to a shore tank. So this shore tank, we've leased shore tanks at 2 different ports. From there, contract bulk, move this material to Kandla port, and then from this shore tank, move the material back to India via road, for example. So I think what is possible in China, I would really want to also see that happening in India, see that happening in some of these other regions. So while today we are struggling with, for example, with Kandla port, every time, I think the first thing that comes to my mind is demurrage. How long is the vessel going to wait before it is going to get berthing? And even after that, we really have to test the kind of services given our goods are hazardous. Also working with partners at the port, ensuring safe warehousing, ensuring there is no safety incident that happens. So all of this is a lot of effort that we undertake. And today, somehow there has also been a tendency to, for the most difficult things, try to sort of do it in-house. Within the group, we basically, there are certain hazardous products where we today own the ISO containers and manage the to and fro logistics, because we cannot have leased ISO containers to do that. For a lot of domestic logistics, we've onboarded vehicles within a group company and try to do it. And I think that has been one way to solve the problem. I am still, I think, looking forward to providers where we can discuss this is the problem and then just get the solution to the problem, rather than getting, providers who say we have expertise in this. So we have expertise in these regions, or we have expertise in these modes of transport. From there, migrating to saying, this is your business problem, I can solve this for you. So
It's very interesting because unfortunately coastal shipping really hasn't picked up that much. We don't have too many takers for coastal shipping. And it may not be everybody's cup of tea, like for small exporters, mid-size exporters, merchant exporters, because we have a burgeoning number of merchant exporters that are coming up. And it's not possible every time to do it. And I understand because capacity is a problem. And I also agree that whether you like it or not, what China can do, very few countries can do. And they make it seem so simple, so seamless. You don't even know the number of hands that are working behind to just get that one particular thing away. So it's a fantastic thing. Mr. Weil, it's your turn now. You know, when I was doing my research, I was super excited to know about what the Kingdom of Bahrain had launched about the multimodal logistics hub. I didn't even know that this existed. It is my bad. So, my question to you is that in 2021, when the Kingdom of Bahrain launched the fastest regional multimodal logistics hub in the Gulf with the fastest turnaround time of 2 hours for containers, can you imagine doing something like this in India? With the launch of the Bahrain Global Sea Air Hub, how much of this has helped your airline? Because, you know, Gulf Air is a very big player. It's also the national carrier over there. In terms of the loads, yields, profit, and, you know, the kingdom per se. So what's your take on it? Very interested to hear.
Assalamu alaikum. How are you all? Just want to ask a question. How many person work on Gulf Air here? Gulf Air? Families work in Gulf Air before? Little. Anyway, thank you so much for your contribution to the airline. Basically, is what come to what she said is multiple, let's say, solution in Kingdom of Bahrain. Gulf Air, we have done something different completely, which is we changed the concept of cargo airline or cargo based on passenger capacity. So at the moment as Gulf Air, we do offline to offline business, offline to online, tracking services. You know, it doesn't need to come to Gulf Air network. This is to support the logistic part in terms of Bahrain. Yes, there is the turnover of containers is 2 hours, which is 2 hour mean is when the customer apply through the application to try to clear the shipment from the port. But reality is this 2 hour become difficult because we have the airport customs and the port custom. They're not talking to each other. So we as Gulf Air came in the middle. We try to push these two parties, very important one, to talk as one, to be able to enhance the service in Bahrain. As all you know, DHL is in Bahrain for a long time. So DHL, they have their own part in terms of contribution, but we Gulf Air did a biggest part, which is we changed the logistic completely, you know, to generate revenue to Bahrain as a kingdom, plus to the airline. And proudly to say, at the moment is we start just recently, we do, you know, sea to air. So I don't think any airline, maybe I could mistake and have done this now. So we do tracking services, sea to air, freighters, everything at the same time with the 23 partners. And the question people always ask me, why Gulf Air doesn't have freighter, right? So freighter is a concept that can cost you a lot of money, but at the same time, when you have 23 partners with 100 offices worldwide, I think freighter part should stay in a side. And I'm proud to say today as Falcon Cargo Department, which is we are a small department, 14 staff. I have 11 of them here in India. We generate about 8 to 10% of total Gulf Air revenue. So when it's come to the multi, let's say, options of logistic part, yes, we do everything to support the kingdom. Plus that we invite owners of freighters to operate from Bahrain to support the logistic part.
That's very impressive. Thank you very much. Rohan, thank you for waiting patiently. I have 2 questions to ask you. I'm going to jump from what my question to Dr. Ghanshyam was regarding the talent pool, because you're a freight forwarder, an IATA agent, and a customs broker. So do you believe that we don't have trained people for it? And the other one is that are we as the logistics industry, as a service provider, advocating for multimodal logistics enough? If we aren't, what are the reasons for it and what can we do about it? Please, I would like your take on it.
All right. So firstly, good evening, everyone, and good evening to everyone on the panel as well. So I'm going to, for us, because we're more into EXIM logistics, that is cross-border, I'm going to refer to multimodal when we're talking about exports and imports. I feel we only use multimodal. Multimodal solutions are like painkillers. We only have this when we have pain. And Dr. Ghansham rightly said, if there's a demand, we can do something about it. It's been talked about more since COVID, because the traditional routes, that is ocean and air, were ineffective or too expensive, and we couldn't really, move containers or cargo by air on time. I want to just cite two examples. One is Sea Air, like the speaker before me mentioned. And the other one, the Sea Air, was very popular during COVID. And because air freight rates were like maybe, I think more than $10, $11 a kilogram. And we'd reached out to a pharma company within 3 weeks of COVID being declared as a pandemic. And we reached out and I said, listen, we do Sea Air for retail. Do you want to do Sea Air for pharma? And out of maybe 8 companies, just one company said, yes, I'm interested and I need to know more. It took me maybe 2 weeks for us to make presentations, explain to them how it's done, because they have these compliances and they couldn't figure out how does it fit into a letter of credit document, right? So an LC says you can only get a bill of lading, but nobody knows what you do with a multimodal document. Correct. And we were moving refrigerated temperature control cargo by reefer from here to Dubai, transferring it into airlines on the same day, delivering, and this was a console container with 8 destinations in the FCL, which got converted into 8 air shipments.
Oh, wow.
So 1 bill of lading, 8 airway bills. What document do they get?
Correct.
What kind of custom entry do they make? So they couldn't understand if it's going to be, okay, but what is my final destination? Is it Dubai? Is it the final country? Other questions that were asked were insurance. What happens to my cargo everyone's covered on cargo insurance, but what happens if something goes wrong between one mode to the other?
Correct.
So what we did was we spent a lot of time trying to make sample documents. We, give them actually sample sets which were sent to their offices. We made presentations with the legal team, compliance team, and the shipping team. For insurance, we appointed our own surveyor who would survey all of this and then move ahead. Why this is not happening so frequently is, do we all have the time to really work on these solutions? Most decision making in India is done based on price.
Correct.
I think most forwarders here and customers would agree. We are a very price-driven, logistics industry. For us, we don't really have the time. Salespeople who are supposed to sell solutions
Correct.
are more motivated or incentivized to bring in volumes, and so they're not really selling solutions.
Agreed.
COVID was an interesting time. All of us had more time. We were sitting at home. We could just, build solutions. There was a desperate need for something to happen, and it worked.
Correct.
But as soon as the freight rates became normalized and air freight, aircrafts were coming to India, things changed.
Correct.
The second time we experienced this is with the Red Sea problem. When we had cargo that had to get to Europe urgently, and this was just, start of January, and we couldn't ship anything. So people started coming up, can you give me a solution? And the solution was to ship into, let's say, Dubai, move by land all the way to, above the Suez, I think Jeddah, and then ship it out from there. We did, I think, 3 containers, post which became too expensive to move as well. So price, timeliness, do we really need this is where we have a problem. What can we do as an industry is we need to incentivize and appreciate solution-driven logistics, programs or products that people are coming out with. We have to train people more in terms of skilling. I think we are an organization with 220 people, and maybe there are 10 people who understand how to make the documents, who understand what the customs requires, what the letter of credit requires. So we need to spend more time skilling within our organization and also training people as a, overall industry. So as Amtoy, maybe we can do more training programs and explain what can be done. Finally, I think customers need to think beyond ocean and air. They need to start thinking, okay, can I park maybe 5% of my cargo on a multimodal service throughout the year, regardless if it's a peak season or a lean season? And not many customers have maybe the time to do this, or they don't have the approvals in place, because larger organizations, they have a lot of systems and processes in place. Smaller organization don't have, let's say, the time to experiment. So we should promote this as a product, like maybe at some point LCL became a product, and we'll have to start promoting this with partners like Gulf Air, maybe other airlines, and literally, the countries themselves. And like Mitesh said, maybe we start providing this even if the customer doesn't ask for it. And at some point, it becomes more mainstream.
Actually, that's very, very apt and a very appropriate thing. Thank you for that. Is because, disruptions, geopolitical, they are like one of the biggest factor when we have to think out of the box, especially when we, like you rightly said, we are price driven. We had customers who were shipping out to Khartoum and Port Sudan. And when the civil war happened, all of a sudden, the prices were jacked up. There were no vessels available. Or when Jeddah had issues and there were vessels being rolled over. How do you do it when Israel, because India is a very big market for sanitary ware from Mundra into Israel. And when the war happened, so how do you do it? And it's very important. I think AMTOY, FFAI, with their training programs can definitely do, sessions, first of all, to make people understand what multimodal is all about, and then start the training part of it. That would be very nice. And you know what? You've just given me an opportunity. I'm going to catch you. We will do a session and you can't run away from that. Caroline, thank you for waiting. We saved the best for the last.
Okay.
During the research and with what all our previous panelists have spoken, lack of infrastructure or infrastructure problems are one of the biggest issues why multimodal is not expanding or is not being popular, especially in India. But with the government of India announcing the multimodal logistics parks development across the country to help the seamless transfer of goods, in your opinion, how important is the location of these parks? Is because, India is very wide. We have multiple manufacturing zones and hubs and states where we are doing it. Yes, we have a lot of ICDs now everywhere. But in your opinion, how important is the location of this? And also, if you can draw parallels, because your company has an AFS station with that respect. And if you are working at any of these logistics parks, or if your clients are, or if you've ever had any conversation, what has their feedback been? And would you be able to recommend at least 2 best practices if we had to incorporate this in India? I would like your take on that.
Yep. Good evening, all. First and foremost, there's a big lacuna in terms of people understanding what is multimodal and intermodal, like you rightly pointed out.
Correct.
So that clarity needs to be built in first and foremost across the pan. So once that clarity comes in, at least people know the difference between multimodal and intermodal. To drive through this multimodal logistic park, which is a government initiative policy driven by the Ministry of Highway Management Logistics in India under the support of MORTH as well as NHIA. What this brings in basically is a cost effectiveness in terms of curving into under one solution, one window when we talk about. If you today talk about in terms of data statistics available, the total throughput cost, India is still higher by 13% in comparison to other larger economics and 72% higher than China. So when we spoke about China bring a solution, why are we aren't competitive? That's the reason for it. We are still 72% higher in terms of cost. In order to curb it, I believe government has already identified 35 such logistics parks. The minimum criteria is basically 100 acres of land, which will take care of your warehousing solution for temperature, also temperature, non-temperature, all kind of solutioning, having a high-end MHEs around it, your road transportations, your rail transport connectivity, which will in fact curb the current constraint what we see in the market. The only way to support this bringing in education and learnings across the domain. People should be knowing about it, and basically one recommendation is the continuous training and effectiveness what we have to bring in amongst at least the freight forwarding fraternity. Like I said, MPO is still in the initial stages wherein people aren't aware of it. We only talk about air, sea, air. Even in the previous panel discussion, I was listening to the conversations. We only know about this, but multimodal is beyond that.
Correct.
So most important is having a learning amongst ourselves first and foremost, spreading it across, making the customers also aware that the importance and how cost effectiveness this multimodal transport can bring in. That kind of validation have to be important. Like we spoke about the air freight solutioning, what we have in Continental is basically one of a kind solution. It took 10 years for us as an organization to get an approval. Of course, the bureaucracy which we see around, the policies. The biggest irony is in order to have that air freight station set up, we had to take approval from the railway ministry. Once this is set up, at least now people know how to have an air freight station domain across the across the network for that matter. But nevertheless, we start off with something. The advantage what we have is basically you bring in the cargo to our facility, have it custom cleared. We have our own trucking facility wherein the cargo can be picked up. Cargo can be screened inside our facility. Build the ULD, directly tender the freight to the airline, and the shipment is uplifted. So that's kind of value addition what we have brought in. But from the broader aspect, it like the need of the hour, basically, wherein the shipment which has to be urgently reached at a destination, we are only limiting to air and CNCR. What can be thought beyond it is something we'll have to all work around.
Thank you. It is. I think the AFSs are very desperately required in the hinterlands of India, where we have only access to ICDs. They don't even have their own airports. So if it is, then it is because one part of multimodal also deals with people. So that is also a very, very important thing. And rail logistics, unfortunately, isn't really being given the importance, not only from the environment standards, but also from a user perspective. Because when we had to do the rail shipment and our client was sending it, the first question we went is, where are we going to pick up the cargo from? Which station is it going to come to? And if we have to send you the shipment, where are we going to do the booking? So but now the government is picking up, and there is a lot of discussion happening on giving priority to rail transport and rail logistics. But the biggest thing is that unless and until they do not consider railway logistics as premium as the sea and air, and they don't stop the trains because the passenger trains need to go, I don't think rail transport is going to be given that kind of importance from every single angle. Dharmendra ji, I had to ask you this because your company is probably the biggest in terms of the exports and imports, and you are at the forefront. You deal with such difficult, complicated projects and things like that. You also have the governments approaching you, the Indian government and the different governments of different countries. If you had to give your recommendation or your suggestions to the Indian government on the policy and regulation framework to have multimodal logistics actually grow even by 1% or 2%, or where we can kickstart off it, what would your recommendations be with your experience and with the kind of projects and all you're doing and the problems that you are facing currently?
Chaitali, good question actually. This topic itself is in the forefront with us when we deal with the government agencies. First and foremost is the documentation part, which we say there should be one single document which should help recognize every leg of transportation by all modes, and there should be all linkages through the digital transaction at the back end. So we as a shipper or cargo owner should not be asked to generate multiple documents, right? Because then we have to also present it to the bank and the couple of other agencies all the time. So that is one thing which we are now recommending very strongly. And in fact, happy to share with you that we have been part of some of the forums where we interact with the government with the close quarters, and government thinking is way ahead than us. We as the shippers or the LSPs, the logistics service partners, are yet not there where government is thinking. Just one thought I can share with you here, and which can help you understand the magnitude of it. They are thinking that with the e-way bill alone, can they track anything which moves entire country by any means, any mode? And this e-way bill will be applicable across all. It's like your Aadhaar card, it's like your PAN card. Agree, like that. So e-way bill is thought on those lines. So much so that some of the pilot I'm aware of it, where they're looking at even track and trace will be happening. Like so, just think of it. Imagine that the government portal is becoming more like a portal of your Amazon. Trying to deal with, you want one product and services, blah blah blah. You scroll down, go up. It is intuitive, and in fact, it helps you take the next step. And also, it helps you track and trace all your cargo, all your steps. So government is thinking on those lines. They've already conducted certain pilots for it. In fact, we are privy to it, and I think in 2-3 years from now, governments, all when I say governments, meaning multiple governments, in becoming one, that is state governments to becoming the central government, they will have, in true sense, a single window and a single digital platform. ULIP, which we are aware of it will be way beyond ULIP.
That's going to be fantastic then.
So that is where we are also involved. We give some suggestions as a shipper. And in parallel, what we are trying to give suggestions to the Ministry of Highways and Roadways and Shipping on the, especially the road over bridges which you see on the road.
Yes.
The height of that to be regulated,
True.
And the Gati Shakti is still not helping us in these many ways, because we conduct our route survey for moving a cargo from A to B, and the cargo is heavy, cargo is overdimensional, cargo has got all the challenges it can face on road. And when we put it on the road and we start going in the direction where it is supposed to, we have conducted our route surveys, and then we get a surprise or shock that there is some overbridge has already come up, and that too, the height has not been maintained the way it has been surveyed for. And you have a challenge now, you're dealing with the local authorities, municipal authorities, village, and the state government and the central government. They're also running helter-skelter. What happened? How this has happened? Because they're not integrated in your plan, and it's not possible also for them to integrate. So there has to be some sort of, some sort of a nerve center, where, and I keep giving this example to government, in a couple of the forums, how you have evolved the income tax, where nobody can actually spare and nobody can be hidden not to pay taxes, etc. And they get to know and how and where to penalize you on the taxes. Why can't they have it on this when it is infrastructure development? When the local villagers want to put some overbridge on the highway, they also need to follow certain process, and some mandatory clearances are there, which gives the right. It could be a fastest because of the digital footprint now thing available. Could be seamless. There are a lot of examples for it, but it must follow. So surprises should not be there. We, for the governments, one of the refinery project we built, the Super ODC, we started moving. Everything was planned for 3 months of transaction. When we come on the road, we see the surprises, challenges, unforeseen, unplanned, and suddenly the leg becomes longer and longer to the extent it becomes 6 months. In the process, every stakeholder is penalized because nobody is ready for 6 months to be on the road.
Correct.
Right.
Absolutely.
So this is also part of the multimodal logistics challenges, because not all stakeholders are seamlessly speaking to each other.
It's very interesting that you say that, because we don't do too much of project exports or imports, but I have friends who, and some of them have had horror stories, especially when you have overhead bridges coming up overnight when in the survey it was not there. So you've taken that route, you've taken all the permissions, and then all of a sudden you're stuck and you don't really know what it has to be done. Or like you have a barge and the river dries up, and what are you going to do about it? I mean, that is there. I was going to ask Mitesh a question, but this has put up a very interesting thing. So I want to now ask all the other panelists, because Dharmendra ji has spoken on this. Today, every mode of transport is competing with others in India. So do you think that the government of India should develop a non-compete policy or a restrictive policy so that all the modes of transport work with each other against, very example what Dharmendra ji you spoke about? And do you think the ministries like the railways, the port, boards, state government aligning with other government agencies like Concor and all need to improve their infrastructure? And is there a possibility that we could actually have all of these companies working, all these organizations working together? If any of you would like to.
Yeah.
Dr. Ghanshyam?
Yeah. So, my friend has just mentioned that everything is working in a different way. So, if we have a single umbrella for all the solutions, that will be a great support from a government. I'm sure there is some improvement is going to happen in Multimodal Act of 1993. So, we feel that they should not compete each other. They should work as a one partner for economic growth. If there is a one ministry who can manage the road, railway and other stuff for the cargo movement, it will help the country to grow in a faster space.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Mitesh, you deal with a lot of has cargo, and it's not easy to ship has cargo. Domestically, yes, maybe, but there are now more checkpoints happening. But when you're exporting, especially when you have certain classes of has cargo, when we are talking the class 4 with the subdivisions or the class 5 with the subdivisions, it's difficult to even get a shipping line to, or even an airline. Airline is still simpler because I'm very proud to say we are very good with our has cargo and we have trained very well. But for shipping lines, it's a free for all kind of a thing. Nobody really is trained per se. So when we are dealing with has cargo, it's generally a nightmare because most of the shipping lines will not accept has cargo. Even a mixed load, leave aside a single container. Certain cities or ports are very averse to it when they don't have mother vessels calling. So they have to depend on the barge operators to take it to, like, let's say a Colombo or a Port Kelang from Calcutta or Chennai or even Tuticorin, as a matter of fact. So my question to you is that what are the safety requirements and compliances that, one needs to adhere to if we have to work with has cargo? Also, in order to ensure optimal service time but maintain your cost efficiency, what is required to be done, because it is there. And if one wants to partner with Aarti Industries, let's say a shipping line wants to partner with you and all, what is it that you would require from them in terms of compliances? Because you'll have a whole set of compliances in place. So please, if you could give your take on it.
Sure. So I think what you mentioned earlier is quite right. We are not the most preferred customers when it comes to accepting cargoes, especially with shipping lines. And therefore, I mean, overall, the swing that you've seen in the industry over these last years with all the disruptions, we tend to see it both ways. So we, within a span of 6 months, go from take it or leave it to I'm going to be your most strategic partner. That swing keeps on happening. In terms of the bigger organizations, whether it's the airlines or the shipping lines, overall, I sense that they have the necessary understanding and the necessary capabilities to take care of safety, compliance, etc. Where we need to invest most is basically our partners who manage the domestic logistics and warehousing, which is where there is a gap. And we've been doing a few initiatives we've taken to sort of help our partners here. For example, for all the drivers that manage domestic transport for us, we have a training program. We have a training room that is established at our factory in Vapi. They conduct a full 3-day training program for handling and managing has cargo, managing emergencies, etc. And then there is a refresher 1-day course every 3 years. I would like to share over here that this program is available for people, our partners who work with us, but also partners who generally work in the industry or who want to understand the hazardous. So this is free as an initiative from Aarti Industries. The second thing that we've done is we've established a centralized logistics control room at Vadodara. Here also there is a partner called LCS that we work with, and they sort of keep an eye on everything that is transported for Aarti Industries. Because we work with so many transport partners, we try to get their GPS data or whatever integrations with their systems and ensure that if there is any emergency, if there is any incident, within a 2-hour time frame, our emergency response team is there at the site to support, in addition to whatever could be the local emergency things that will be there. So our teams are doing work in terms of translating the hazard from the MSDS, which is quite complicated, to ensuring, whatever is available on the label is available in vernacular languages. There is a emergency contact number that is available. The driver has a TREM card with the pertinent details to be able to handle the emergency if and when it occurs. In fact, every time that any material is on the weighbridge, and this is mainly material that is going out, there is a safety person who is already around and will just sort of engage the driver in a 2-3 minute conversation, tell him this is what you're carrying. If so and so incident happens, this is what you're supposed to do. So I think this is something that we need to continue to build. There are a lot of regulations in law. So there are domestic regulations for India. There are regulations for exporting it to other countries, and then there are all these international regulations, whether it is IMDG or IATA and so on and so forth, who have their own guidelines. Sometimes these could be very different. We've had challenges where in one country the product is classified as X, in another country it is classified as Y. In one country the product is hazardous, moving to the other country it is classified as non-hazardous, and so on and so forth. So to be able to manage all of this, I think our teams are working and doing their best. And frankly, I still don't know if we are doing enough, but we are on that path. We look forward to continue to get recommendations. And as an organization, we are here to support to improve the level of the overall industry in terms of safety, compliance, hazard management.
It's so important to have safety and compliances in place, and it's so heartening to know that you're doing it for the transporter, especially for the poor drivers, because 5 out of 10 times they don't even know what they're doing. And I cringe when I see a this side up box which is being put upside down, and the first thing that goes is no, this is not what you do. This is how you're supposed to do it. But it's very, very essential, and maybe you can talk to the Transport Association and actually get them to send their drivers to you all, or maybe you could do a training course for them, because it is a brilliant initiative that you are doing at Aarti. Mr. Vaid, I have to ask you this question. How important it is for the countries to have unified regulations to streamline logistics operations, and would you be able to give us an example of the same, and was the effect positive or negative?
So it's basically Mr. Maish say everything. Like some country regulation is very clear. And when the shipment moves to the country, we discover there is something missing the other part.
Yes.
So every time we try to develop our team and our GSA to read the regulation carefully, but now we step ahead of time. We did something better, which is we involve AI in getting us all the information that we want, even in terms of documentation, that we try to make the AI reading all the regulation in all of the world to tell us exactly before we accept any shipment, what is the document that require and information. But there is something missing here, which is we are talking about all cargo. We forget animal movements. We have a lot of animal regulation. Some breed are allowed in some countries, some is not. Some require blood sample 1 month, some is not. We face the same thing here in India, So when we find this difficult is that even if you go to the website to read some information, it's not clear enough.
Agreed.
So we actually appreciate if the information are clear, because we actually handle everything. So we want to get the right information for the customer. Even sometimes customer themselves, they get wrong informations.
Yeah.
So when we carry anything, come find a destination. And because Bahrain is a transit hub, we discovered that Dubai example won't accept it. Then the shipment stuck in Bahrain cannot be sent back.
Correct.
Because the documents are not correct. So a smart way is we use the technology, but at the same time, we use people knowledge to be able to help us in terms of putting the regulation. And the most important now part, which is compliances. We have a system now in place, hopefully going to go live after a few months, that read, the profile of the customer to be able to ask this customer being manipulating, or this customer is genuine, or customer being involved in any kind of a scam. So this is even help us to protect our own customers who doesn't know about the shipper, what they do exactly, so we can alert them.
Thank you. Live animals is very stressful, and we have never been able to figure out as to why certain breed of dogs can't be exported and why certain breed can be exported. And then when you want to bring the imports in, pets, there are so many rules and regulations, and some of them just change overnight. So if you're not up to the mark, it just does not work, and the poor animals are then stuck over here. So it's definitely a problem. Rohan, this one is for you. What we have heard so far from all the panelists is that there is no fixed solution, and there is no one solution. And you are free to chip in too, Caroline, is that there is no one solution for clients, because there is nothing available like that. So we need industry and commodity specific solution. What are your recommendations? I know you're very passionate about this, and we've spoken about this earlier, the challenges. And, you can give me e-commerce, because I know you do e-commerce. Also, if we were to take certain regions into place, so whether we take the India, Iran, Russia part, or the China, Russia with their rail transport and all, whatever you feel you would like to, then if you can have your views on this, because
Okay. So e-commerce, let me take e-commerce first and then the Iran Russia corridor later. So a lot of Indian companies are now registering as sellers overseas, right? So they want to set up accounts with Amazon in Europe, Amazon in the US, and now they want fulfillment to be done in a way which is connected to the order. So let's say they get 20 orders. It's very easy if they're selling the same product, same SKU. So they send a container or LCL, we store it and we ship it out. But then we have returns coming in again. So what do they do with the returns? They can't keep it in that country, or they have to destroy it. Sometimes they're very valuable. You have to bring it back.
exactly.
Now they've exported it from India, goes into that country, and maybe we want to store it in, I had a meeting recently for someone who wants to store something in Dubai, and then they want to distribute further by air freight because it's transit sensitive. And they don't want to do it in those countries because they don't know where they want to keep the cargo. So when it comes to e-commerce, there is no real regulation. We ourselves partner with multiple vendors. We need to understand that a lot of these things are very new in general. Maybe 20 years ago, we didn't need this. You had a clear importer, a clear distributor who then sold it in the shops.
Correct.
Right? So now with quick commerce, the internet, e-commerce, everything's changing. So yes, it would be great if we can have, the government can have certain policies around e-commerce and how customers or how Indian manufacturers and Indian exporters, Indian sellers can sell overseas, and how they can possibly work with customs if it can be a little bit more flexible. The authenticity of these documentations and authenticity of these transactions are also important. So while customs is there to regulate, it also can become very rigid at some point. In terms of the Iran corridor, the Chabahar port and then going into Russia, of course, that's India's response to the string and pearl initiative by China. It is, we've done not too many shipments there. It is, let's say, we've seen a lot of content, a lot of lectures and a lot of ways to do it. We've tried to move it for a few commodities. It is interesting, but then it's too long a process, and then the documentation can be complicated again. So it is an alternate. It worked during the, let's say, Russia-Ukraine war, and we didn't have any ships going there. But then we also had the option of sending it to China and moving by rail all the way to Russia, all the way to Europe and Russia, which was easier than doing it directly from India to Iran and then going, by road and then by sea and then by road again. So once again, I think all these tools, the flexibility, the regulations, all of that, if it's easier, it will be more widely accepted and implemented.
Thank you. I think Shankar Bhau would have something different to say because he's a specialist for this, and he's actually gone with the containers from India all the way. Shankar Bhau, sorry, you're not on the panel this time, but we will take this up another time. I have to ask you this, Caroline, because we are running short of time, and thank you for being a lovely audience. I know there's a party happening outside. Is that the government of India has initiated various logistics schemes and programs. We have the PM Gati Shakti, which is the most popular of the lot. There's Sagar Mala, there's Bharat Mala, there's dedicated freight corridors. We have SEZs and FWTZs, the national logistics policy, the state logistics policies, warehousing standards, and now the international north-south transport corridor. Will all of this, besides boosting our exports, also help in the long run with our multimodal activities subject to our infrastructure being in place, the documentation being in place? What's your take on that?
I was listening to the conversation wherein the PM Gati Shakti is still a concern, a challenge, because the way the roadmap has been built, the evaluation is not up to the mark. So it's too early for us to comment on this, whether these kind of policies will bring in some kind of effectiveness in the multimodal logistics solutions. Another thing is even the ULIP, which was supposed to go live few months back, is still in this nascent stage. We are still discussing. The effectiveness can only be brought in if there's a timeline fixed to it. Today, we are only discussing and things are only on papers. How do we put it in regard and go live with it? It's something we'll have to, we as, of course, from the Freight Forwarding, many other fraternities have to come together and see how the effectiveness can be brought in. Now, one more thing I wanted to add, Chaitali, when you said about the multimodal aspect of it, why ocean seems to be more complicated than air is basically because of the long haul what we discussed.
Yes.
Why two UN number or two class cannot be clubbed is if there are exigencies, how do we handle it in on the ship when the vessel is in water? It's difficult. IATA air is more simplified because of the transit hall we talk about it. So it's easy. And moreover, in ocean, as an user at the desk cannot handle the DG declaration like what we see in the air side of it.
Yeah.
We can cite an OPIA.
Yeah.
So in a nutshell, if I put together, these policies can come into effectiveness if there is a timeline set in, if there is response which comes on the positive side from the supplier side of it, the other logistics support which comes into picture into as far as the end-to-end solutioning is concerned.
All right. Thank you. And we are going to end this session with one last question, is because I want your take, Mr. Weil, and if anybody else would like to talk about it. We are talking about the India, Middle East, Europe economic corridor. How exciting is this? Because we already have the India, Iran, Russia corridor, but India and Middle East, they special relationship. I think, everybody, all of us keep visiting, have offices there, work with them and all. So I would like your take on the IMEC, which is going to come up, and if any one of you would also like to do, and that would be our last question with you guys.
Okay, for us as India is very important for Bahrain for years. We grow up with, around the Indian mentality in terms of business mind. People are a switch, So we are very proud of this in Bahrain and the Indian community with a business established in Bahrain. That we found that Bahrain become very important logistically for India. So India for us very important. Yes, probably is some people here they will say, oh, but Gulf are closing down some stations, But guess what? We are increasing frequency in other stations, So until we go back to the fully operation again to India. So India for us, and Yasin, he's there. He's a cargo manager. He can witness that we have increased India cargo through Bahrain airport. Almost 60%. How many, Yasin?
65. That's massive.
65. Yeah. So we are actually targeting this, but we would become a unique in terms of the cargo that we are selecting. So India using Bahrain as a gateway, I'm sure Emirates, Dubai, Etihad, is very important.
Yes.
So we cannot ignore that part that India actually shaping up, the GCC and the Middle East, regardless now. But I'm scared about one thing now when the Chinese thing finish.
Yes.
How India gonna pick up themselves again, But again, I'm not worried because always there is people that can create opportunity within India itself.
The next couple of months are going to be very interesting if the trade wars start with the tariffs coming in, and then it's going to be boom time for India, and it's going to be massive. Yes, Dharmendra ji.
Maybe on a closing note from my side on
Yes, please.
the geopolitical situation
Yeah.
in Middle East to be watched out for it. We need to wait for before we call it a success in terms of the corridor. Conceptually fantastic. It can deliver what it is, its stated objectives are.
Correct.
But the geopolitical situations are changing too fast and too frequent,
Yeah.
So therefore, probably, until it stabilizes, the entire Middle East corridor stabilizes,
Yes.
nothing more can be expected from this.
That's a very realistic and a frank answer. Thank you
Yeah.
very much. And with
Thank
that, we come to an end to this session. The advantage of going last is that if you kind of go a little bit beyond time, Ayushi is not going to yell at you and still call you back the next time. Thank you very much. I think what we wanted as a takeaway from this is that there are opportunities available. Many of us feel that there is a saturation which has come with logistics, but it's not. These are very interesting times. So if you could even think of incorporating multimodal logistics or even start a dialogue, that would be excellent. And I think on behalf of FFA and the other associations with AMTOY, we would be very happy to look forward and conduct courses. Correct, na, Shankar Bhau? We can look at doing sessions and all. So thank you. And we are open to Q&A if we have anybody wanting to ask questions of our panelists. No one? All right. Thank you very much. You have been a wonderful audience once again. Thank you very much. A little more louder clap. We are finishing for the day. And there's chai, coffee available after this. So thank you.
Chaitali, I think the panel discussion was so good, so interactive, so insightful that people don't have any questions because you answered everything without them asking you a question. Ladies and gentlemen, what a wonderful panel discussion.